How does a civilization turn an ordinary event into a divine legend? Perhaps myths are not the product of real events, but the product of people who could not explain those real events. Most people assume this: ancient humans were naive and ignorant. But what if they weren't? What if all the ancient gods are just different interpretations of the exact same event? Divine beings descending from the heavens, the first unknowns to set foot on planet Earth, powers that, according to some narratives, shaped humanity, and according to others, determined the very fate of mankind. So, who are these Anunnaki? Where did they come from? How did they emerge? And how did they become the most mysterious figures in human history? The problem is not the Anunnaki, nor the Sumerians, nor aliens. The problem is that everyone keeps repeating the same answer, and nobody is changing the question. In almost every narrative we have encountered until today, the question was always the same: did the Anunnaki really come? But we are going to set that question aside for a moment, and we are going to ask something else. If 5,000 years pass over an event, what is left behind? 50,000 years? 200,000 years? 400,000 years? Because what we actually have in our hands is not the Anunnaki. What we have left is broken tablets, missing sentences, translations, interpretations, and interpretations of interpretations. In this third video of the History of Humanity series, we will examine how stories carved into clay tablets thousands of years ago turned into one of the greatest mysteries of the modern world. In fact, this is just one stop on a long journey that will consist of dozens of chapters. And at the end of this journey, our goal is not to tell you what to think. It is to enable you to see humanity, history, and our place in the universe just a little more clearly. And today, our path will lead us both into the depths of Mesopotamia and to the very origin of myths. Now, let's simplify this a bit. Let's focus on the question, how are myths formed? But not like an academic lecture, simpler, more human. Think of a story passed down by word of mouth. Every person who tells it adds a bit of their own interpretation. An urban legend. An event occurs, but over time, it's not the event itself that is talked about, but the impact it created. The exact same thing happens today. Conspiracy theories, stories that blow up on social media. Once a piece of information is shared over and over, it ceases to be information. It turns into a narrative. And here is the most crucial point. People can alter stories without lying. Only their way of remembering changes. Only the gaps are filled in differently. Now, let's take this even further back. A very interesting event takes place during World War II. In the northeast of Papua New Guinea, an American base is built to stop the Japanese advance in the region, and intense air cargo resupply missions begin. This part is vital. In the Asmat region, near the base, there are tribes that have never had any prior contact with the modern world. As supply crates were dropped by parachute, the cargo would sometimes land in the territory of these tribes. The American soldiers left them alone to avoid any conflict. Furthermore, the immune systems of these completely isolated tribes were defenseless against even a simple flu that we easily recover from. To avoid infecting the natives and wiping them out, the American soldiers did not go down to retrieve the fallen cargo themselves. They watched them from a distance. Ultimately, these tribespeople saw the supply crates falling from the planes, packaged foods filled with different flavors, drinks, dozens of things they had never tasted before. But these people knew nothing of airplanes, nor technology. And after the war ended, those planes disappeared. They never came back. Years later, researchers who went to the region to shoot a war documentary witnessed truly striking moments. The local tribe had built a replica of an American cargo plane entirely out of bamboo trees and begun worshipping it. And these structures had now become ritual objects. According to them, these god planes flying in the heavens were sending them food, supplies, and goods from the divine realm. When these aids stopped after a while, the tribe thought the god planes were angry with them, and so they built bamboo statues of them to show their respect, hoping they would drop cargo crates from the sky once again. You can picture it, right? Because to them, it wasn't just a machine. It was something coming from the sky, and what was unexplainable became sacred over time. The important point here was this. It wasn't that these people were stupid. The problem wasn't intelligence. The problem was a lack of reference. How do you describe something you have never seen before? You compare it to the closest thing you know, and that comparison replaces reality over time. If a god really came to Earth, could we distinguish it from a myth? Now let's go back about 150 years further. The year is 1778. In the middle of the Pacific, on a day when the horizon should have been empty as usual, Hawaiian fishermen noticed something unusual at sea. This looked like no canoe they had ever seen. Massive, dark hulls rising above the water, tall masts reaching into the sky, and giant fabrics resembling white clouds billowing with the wind. Nothing like this had ever been seen in the history of the islands. The news quickly spread to the shores. Elders, priests, and villagers gathered on the beach. Some thought these were people coming from distant lands. Others turned to the stories they knew to make sense of what they saw. At that time in Hawaiian society, there was a major deity associated with war, fertility, and order, Lono. According to some accounts, the arrival of Captain James Cook coincided with a sacred period associated with Lono. The shape of the ships, the appearance of the sails, the arrival of the outsiders. All of this might have reminded some people of ancient religious stories. Imagine a Hawaiian standing on the shore. He has seen nothing but wooden canoes his entire life. He doesn't know what iron is. He doesn't know what firearms are. He has no idea that other continents exist on the other side of the world. And now, massive structures appear on the horizon as if born out of the sea. There is no ready-made category for this in his mind. Therefore, he tries to explain what he sees with the closest story he knows. Perhaps a god, perhaps messengers of the gods, or perhaps a return foretold in ancient prophecies. It is already claimed that when James Cook reached Hawaii, some of the local people might have viewed him as a god. Today, historians still debate how true this actually is. Did such a moment really happen, or is it just one of those famous sailor tall tales? Of course, we can never be certain, but these examples whisper the exact same mechanism to us, whether the stories are entirely true or not. An event happens. The first generation sees it. The second generation listens to it. The third generation tells it. The fourth generation sanctifies it. And the fifth generation makes it unquestionable. This is not just a historical example. This is the mechanism at work in almost all of humanity's myths. For myths to emerge, humans do not need to be stupid. They just need to be human. Now, let's take this back thousands of years. If the same mechanism worked in the ancient world, how might people who couldn't comprehend what they saw have described it? And how might those narratives have changed over time? Right here, we travel to the oldest written records of human history, to Mesopotamia. This is what we have left now. 5,000-year-old broken tablets, missing texts, fragmented stories. And among these fragments, we are trying to see how a civilization described its gods. The beings encountered in these texts are not the abstract, distant, flawless figures depicted in most modern narratives. Quite the contrary. They show anger, they change their minds, they clash, they get jealous, and in some texts, they act in ways shockingly similar to humans. But the real question here is not, were these actually gods? As we look at these ancient accounts, we must ask, what did the people who read these texts think they saw? What did the Sumerians actually tell us? And how much of the Anunnaki story we think we know today is truly written on those tablets? These questions lead us to the most critical threshold of this great journey, the Sumerian texts themselves. In our next step, we will have to examine what the people reading these records actually believed they were witnessing. But before we go there, we must confront a modern shadow standing right in front of us. When these texts were rediscovered centuries later, some modern researchers filled these gaps in a completely different way. Erich von Däniken and Zecharia Sitchin popularized a captivating idea, that ancient gods were actually extraterrestrial visitors who genetically engineered humanity. It is a fascinating narrative, but in trying to decode ancient myths, these researchers inadvertently became modern mythmakers themselves. Because here lies the vital distinction. What we have are the original texts. What we see are popular translations, and massive claims built entirely on top of them. Was human history truly the work of an outside intervention? Or is it just a grand illusion created by words, translations, and the human mind's lack of reference?
Perhaps we didn't find definitive answers today, but sometimes the right questions are more valuable than the answers. Because it is impossible to solve thousands of years of human history and the mysteries of a billion-year-old universe in a single video. That is why this series will be a long journey, where we will examine a different piece of the big picture in each episode. And we don't want to squeeze dozens of different claims into a single video and leave you with contradictions rather than answers. Each episode will have its own question. Each episode will have its own pieces and its own debates. Then we will pause and we will think. Because understanding some ideas requires not just information, but time. Today, we talked about how myths can be born. In the next episode, we will go down to the source rather than the stories themselves. We will listen to the silence of the original texts, searching for the truths that were lost between the lines. We will touch those first words that were covered by time, and we will contrast the narrative offered by popular culture with the cold reality of the clay tablets unearthed from the earth. See you in the next episode.